So welcome to the RPR residential webinar. Again, my name is Maggie Correa. I'm one of the trainers at the Miami Association of Realtors. RPR is a product that is run by NAR, which is the National Association of Realtors. And we are going to go ahead and log in. If you haven't logged in at all and you've never activated it, I want to go ahead and show you how to do that very quickly. So again, from MiamiRealtors.com, go ahead and click on the Miami Gateway in the center of the screen, or in the top right corner where it says MLS login. You'll be prompted to enter your license and password once your gateway opens with all of your different products and services. So once your dashboard opens, or your gateway opens, I should say, with all of your products and services, you're going to go ahead and look for RPR. The icon looks like this. You'll click on it. If you've never logged in and you haven't activated your RPR account, you're going to get a screen that looks like mine. And what you'll do is at the bottom right corner where it says create a new account, you'll click. You're going to supply your last name as it appears on your license, the email address that you supplied on your membership application, because that's the email address we sent them. You'll click on next and they will send you an email. Within that email, there will be a button that says activate my account. You'll go ahead and activate your account. And then you'll be able to log in with that same email and password on this screen. For those of you who have already previously activated your account, when you click on RPR, you would see the RPR home screen. And so I know some of you are probably in the process of activating now, so I'll go ahead and I'll talk about some of the general setup on this homepage. Hopefully that gives everyone a chance to go ahead and activate their RPR account and log in. So this is the homepage. This is the starting point. Across the top, you'll see welcome and your name. Something I like to point out, especially with products like RPR, when you log in on a public computer, maybe once you go back to the office or you go to a class in one of our labs, you'll notice that there are certain things that stay logged in even if you close the browser, even if you turn off the computer. RPR is one of those products that doesn't log itself out unless you've logged out correctly. So always make sure that in the top right corner where there's a welcome, it says your name. Next to the welcome is commercial. For those of you who are interested in commercial or dabble in commercial, there is a commercial side to RPR, and there is an RPR commercial class already recorded for you on YouTube and on Miami Realtors Live. You have your data tools, which we'll be going over. You have your sign out option, but please remember that we prefer you sign out through the gateway. The way to safely log out is by going back to the gateway and clicking on log out. Beneath that, you have your home screen, which we are currently in. We have our results, which would be our list of results. We have details, which would be the details of a property. Our reports, which we're going to create some reports so that you can see what those look like. There's a small bell. There's a notification sound that goes off when your report is ready, and if you'd like to just turn it off or on, you can click on that bell icon. Next to reports, you have a magnifying glass, and that's to search. We're already in the search options, so it's deactivated. And then you have a little graduation cap. If you click on the graduation cap, they are going to have a nice little video that kind of goes over what you need to know if you're logging into RPR for the first time. And then beneath that, they have a video on how to create mailing labels, and that's because that's one of their newer features. There's also different videos and tutorials. Use this downtime to set up your skills. So they already started to include things that we can do, things that we can learn while we are practicing our social distancing. And then next to that little graduation cap, you have your settings, which we will go into shortly to set up your profile. Beneath that, you have your search options. You have properties that you've saved and searches you've saved listed under saved. You have the option of searching all properties because RPR has information from 261 different boards and associations. So they have listing information from 260 something different boards. And then you also have the option of, at the very least, seeing information for that property based on the tax record. So they have a combination of MLS and tax information. Next to all properties, you can search just your sale properties, your leases, find information on neighborhoods, which is usually by zip code, school information, and listings that are close to that school of interest, and market activity. You would go ahead and supply the information in the field, and click on the magnifying glass. Next to the magnifying glass, you have advanced. If you click on advanced, it opens up additional fields that you can add criteria into for your search. Okay, I'm going to go back to the basic search. Beneath that, you have 3 different boxes. One for your recent properties, one for your recent searches, your recent reports, and recent notes. Okay, now recent properties, recent searches, anything that says recent in the system in RPR usually means that it is within the last 30 days. So after 30 days, it will start to clear these listings and searches out. You can, of course, save the property or save the search, which means that it would always be housed up here where it says saved until you decide to delete it. But anything recent would get cleared out after 30 days. They do have a mobile application. You would log in using the same email and password that you created to log in today or previously, but it's the same information. And then at the very bottom, I'd like to point out they have a blog which has additional articles and videos, how-tos, tips, tricks. And then they also have a 1-800 number and a live chat. They're available 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Because RPR is offered by the National Association of Realtors, by NAR, they're available 7 days, all times, because they have to be available in all different time zones. So it's really convenient. If you have any questions, you can always click in and talk to them through live chat or go ahead and call them. So before we get started with RPR and searching, let's go ahead. Our profile is set up. So in the top right corner, there's a small gear. Go ahead and click on that gear. And you'll notice that now on the left, it says profile and settings. Your profile is where you would add your picture, your office logo, contact information, phone numbers for your phone numbers, fax numbers, emails, websites. Where it says MLS or CIE info, they already recognize that you are a member of the Realtor Association of Miami, so you do not need to worry about adding anything in. Your license number, you can add that in. It is optional. In some states it's required, but in the state of Florida it's optional. Either way, it's public knowledge. Anyone can go search to see if you have a valid license. You can add in assistants as long as they also have a license. And then at the very bottom, you can opt into receiving RPR updates and news. But at the very minimum, you do have to check off, obviously, that you have read and agreed to RPR's terms of use and their privacy policy. And then you can go ahead and save what you've done. And while that saves, I wanted to point out that there is a chat feature. So if you have any questions, feel free to leave those in the chat. And at the end of the presentation, I'll go ahead and address those. So once it's saved your information, I can just simply say I want to go back. Okay, there's something else in the settings that I wanted to point out, so I'm going to go ahead and click back into those. And next to profile where it says settings, you have 2 bars or 2 lines in blue and 2 in red. The blue ones are applicable to the residential side. The red ones are applicable to the commercial side. And it's not going to affect the results you see in a search, but it is going to affect how they are labeled. So what you choose to set as new would be based on how many days you select using this little circle, and you can drag it back and forth. So for example, I have mine set to 7 days, which means if I ask the system for active listings, I'm going to see all of them, but the ones that were listed in the last 7 days will say new. If I only have it set to 3 days, then what was listed a week ago or a month ago is still going to show as active, but it won't say new. So this is just personal preference. And you can do the same for your recently sold. I have it set to 180 days because when we're searching for comparables, we're usually searching for recent sales in the last 6 months. And then you have the same options for commercial. Beneath that, you have home areas, and what they do with these home areas is they link them on your search screen as a shortcut so that you can really easily just click on them and run your search in those areas. And it can be a neighborhood, a city, or a zip code. And then when you are done, you make sure that you click on save in the top right corner and save what you've done. Okay, I'm going to go back to the home screen. So I wanted to show you a couple of different scenarios. One, I want to show you what happens when you search for a listing or a property, any property in the system, whether it's active or not. I'm going to show you how to just plug in an address and get additional information. By the way, If you go to Matrix and you search for a property in Matrix, so I'm going to go ahead. There are announcements, there's lots of changes, so make sure you read those when you get a chance. But I just want to show you that there are actually links to RPR in Matrix. So you don't have to, if I find a listing in Matrix, I don't have to jump out of Matrix, go to RPR, plug in the address. I can actually just click on a link and go. RPR is built into the external links. So if you have your external links widget on your home screen, RPR is down at the bottom. It is also listed under links in the top menu options. And if you go into a listing, like I am about to right now, if I wanted more information in RPR and I'm in Matrix, all I have to do is click on these multicolored dots for RPR and it will open the information for this property in RPR. Okay, just wanted to point out to you that it's linked in Matrix. So let's go ahead and search for a property. If I decide to use the same property that I just pulled up in Matrix, I can search using the address. I can search using the MLS number. So I'm going to go ahead and just plug in the address. It's 2817 Southwest 20th Street. There it is. I click on it. I click on the magnification glass, or the magnifying glass, I should say. And there's the property. Now, because it's in the MLS, it's telling me at the top that it's for sale. I have the address. I can go back to the search and find another address by clicking on Find New Address. And again, you can search for a property whether it is listed or not. And then I can save it. So I can actually go ahead and click on Save. And see how now this little star is highlighted in yellow? It's been saved. If I wanted to go ahead and rename it, I could click on Rename, and I could say this was for John Doe. And I can name this property however I'd like. No one's going to see the name I gave it. That's just for my records. That's just for my account. I click OK. So it's been renamed. All right, and remember, it is saved on the home screen on the left-hand side where it says saved. So it's for sale. It tells you that it was activated February 12th. It's got the list price, and then they have the RVM. The RVM is their valuation model. It's their version of an automated valuation model. And it tells you here, if you hover over this blue circle with the white eye, it tells you that the RVM is similar to the AVM, but it's factoring in MLS listings, sales, and off-market data to try and give you a more accurate estimate. So it's going to look at MLS information and tax record information. You can refine the value of the property. Let's say they remodeled the kitchen a year ago and they want to make sure that that's factored into the estimate of the value. You can go ahead and refine it, and I'll show you how to do that in a few. You can create a comp analysis, which is their version of a CMA. They call it a seller's report, and we actually show you how to do this in the CMA workshop. We have a webinar for that coming up next week. We've got our basic facts. We have our estimated value range, how confident they are. So they're very confident in the value that they assigned, what the change has been in the last month, the last 12 months. You can also schedule with showing time, and that's new. So I can go ahead and click and jump into showing time. I have the MLS pictures, but if it weren't in the MLS or had not been in the MLS recently, I would see at the very minimum Google Street View and the satellite overhead view. Because it is active, I see the listing information for the listing agent and office on the right. I see the historical records for this property. So if it had been listed previously, I could see it here and I would be able to compare one listing with an older listing. There's a virtual tour, so I can actually click on see the virtual tour and it'll go ahead and open up and show me the virtual tour. And I can add notes. Notes are again meant for your account. So notes are only visible by you when you are in your account. Whatever I decide to write here is only going to be visible to me. I've got some stats on the right hand side, and those are there pretty much through a lot of the things that you see with the property. It's just to give you an idea of how this zip code is performing in comparison with the county and the state. I can add in a note, I can upload pictures, I can calculate seller's proceeds. There's homeowner information, including a phone number. Not always there, but when it is there, just make sure you verify that it's on the do not call list. We have the tax record versus what was in the listing versus whatever you've observed. So this is an active listing. The tax record says it's a 2-1. The listing says it's a 3-3. I go and I realize it doesn't really have 3 bedrooms. It really has 2. The third is more of like an office. I can go ahead and note that and then write an explanation at the bottom. We have some stats. Again, we have MLS change history. We have our listing detail, our distressed information. So it was distressed is foreclosure. It was distressed back in 2009. We have some interior and exterior features. We have location details, school information, financial info, legal description, mortgage records, tax information, and that's all under the summary. So right now we just went through the summary of the information for this property. If I go back up to the top, if we click from summary into history, in history, we are going to go ahead and see some of the sales and financing activity. And if you don't know what all of these different symbols mean, you can actually just hover over them and a little rectangle will pop up. So it tells me that it's active, and on March 6th, it was listed at 514.9. Okay, but it was on the 25th of February listed at 519. And on the 17th, it was listed at 534. So I can see some history here. I can hover over each of these and see some information. You have prior sales transactions. There's no information. I can toggle between public and listing. I see the tax information, mortgage records, and additional information for the distressed info, which again is foreclosures. Those same statistics we saw in the summary are still there on the right-hand side. Next to the history, we have charts. Charts are just more visual representations of some of those stats that we had seen previously. And it's always going to try to compare when it can, maybe year over year, or the property, the zip code versus the county and the state. Next to your charts, you have your refined value. And this is where I would come in and say, okay, they redid the kitchen a year ago. Let's see what value that's going to add. Because the value is calculated, their RVM is calculated based on the history of sales for the MLS and for the tax record, but it's not necessarily taking into consideration improvements that they've made to the property, especially on the interior. So let's say I wanted to, right now, RPR is calculating the value based on the fact that it's a 2-1. And I know, let's say I'm the one who's trying to list it. I know that it has 3 bedrooms, 3 bathrooms. I know that it was done with permits. It was done legally, but the tax record just hasn't caught up. Sometimes that happens. I would only do this if I know that it was done legally. So there are permits in place. Everything was, inspected and passed inspection. I can go ahead and say it's got 3 bedrooms, 3 bathrooms, apply those changes, and see that the value, which was originally 486, is now really 550. So I can use this to determine how it could potentially affect the value of the property. Or sometimes when you're searching for comparables, you need to know how much a bedroom is adding. So maybe you do it as an example just to get an idea of a number. I'm going to go ahead and restore the original. Refined home improvement. So earlier I mentioned, what if they had remodeled the kitchen? You have a list of improvements here, but if the improvement isn't listed, you have the option of just selecting other and typing in what that improvement was. And then you supply the date that it was completed, the total cost, and they calculate basically the depreciated value based on how long ago it was done. So let's say they remodeled the kitchen. I'm going to say major kitchen remodel mid-range. And I'm going to say they did it in January of 2019 for $15,000. Because someone who just remodeled their kitchen thinks if I spent $15,000, then it is going to add $15,000 to the value of my property. And we know that's not the case. So I click on add, it calculates the depreciation, and it is actually only adding a little less than $10,000. All right. Moving on. Aside from the refined value improvement, you also have refining the value based on needed improvements. Maybe the property needs a new roof and the seller is unwilling to replace the roof, and so the buyer is going to have to assume that responsibility. Well, now I need to adjust the price or the value based on the fact that that improvement is needed and the seller is unwilling to do it. So what I can do is I'm going to go ahead and restore the original again. And where it says add needed improvement, I'm going to put new roof. And I go in and get an estimate and they tell me a new roof is going to be $20,000. When I click on add, it's actually deducting that from the value of the property. Because again, it's losing that value. The person who comes in, the next person, the buyer, is going to have to take that and invest it themselves. They also have these different bars at the bottom. They can be a little subjective at times, but I can go ahead and say, how is this local market? Is it slow? Is it hot? But for each of these tally marks that you see on the bar, the value will go increasing or decreasing. So each of those marks has a different value associated with it. The reason I say that it's a little subjective is because something like the exterior and interior of the home, whether it's better or worse than surrounding properties or surrounding comparable properties, really depends on my opinion. So I can go ahead and, like I mentioned, maybe the home exterior I think is a little bit better than comparable properties, and I move it over 2 tally marks, it's adding almost $9,000. If I move it over completely to superior, it's adding $22,000. And RPR is calculating those changes. So you can go ahead and use these if you like as well. Aside from refining the value, you have the comp analysis I mentioned earlier. That is the comparative market analysis. They call it the seller's report. It's their version of a CMA. They guide you through it step by step, and we go through this in our CMA workshop. And then lastly, what you see for the property is neighborhood information. And when I click on neighborhood, it kind of veers away from the property a little bit to focus on that zip code. So it's letting me know what the median estimated values are for the properties in that zip code, the changes to those values in the last month, the changes to those values in the last 12 months. Again, I have comparisons of the zip code with the city, the county, and the state. And so I've got additional stats. But now they start giving me information on the demographics of the people who live in the zip code as well. So I see the population of children by age. I see the population of adults by age as well. If I scroll back up to the top, next to summary, I have housing. And again, this is now focused on the entire zip code. This is going to tell me, again, information on the estimated home value and the changes to those values in the last month and 12 months. But it also tells me the percentage of those who own versus rent. And then it also is going to tell me beneath that information on the list price versus the volume, the price range, price per square foot, the size of homes, age range, and number of bedrooms. If I want to know more about the people who live in the zip code, I click on people. And now I can see the population density, the median age, the ratio of men and women, levels of education, population of children again, or age of the children, population of adults by age, households with kids, income brackets, occupations, and presidential voting patterns. If I click on economy, it's going to tell me a little bit more about unemployment rate. So now I see income per capita, I see unemployment, labor force. And then lastly, I see quality of life. It's going to give you information on average rainfall, days of sun, commute time, how people get to work, average monthly temperatures, and then a walkability score. And by the way, if you haven't noticed, I'd like to point out that oftentimes RPR does give you a little phrase that says about this data. They're very transparent about what the data is representing and where they got it from. So for example, the walkability score tells you that this neighborhood or zip code is rated for walking access to general points of interest reflected in the overall score, plus amenities such as retail stores and leisure. So it's going to go ahead and it's going to calculate basically how close or how what the proximity is of certain, let's say, parks and retail stores. Can I just get up and walk to CVS or Publix if I need to buy something, or am I going to have to get in my car and drive a little bit? So they go ahead and they give it a score, and the highest score is out of 5. All right. So we have officially gone through our information for a single property. I'm going to go back home a second. And because I just searched it, it's there under recent properties. And because I saved it, it's also listed under saved. There it is. Okay. So if I wanted a report for this property, I'm going to go ahead back into it. On the right hand side, I can either print this page. So I can click on print. And it is going to print basically exactly as it appears on our screen. But if we wanted to make this a little more user-friendly for the customer, I could go ahead and create a report. So I'm going to go ahead and click on create a report. And what you see here is in the first step, that's the property, or if it's a zip code or a school, you would go ahead and you would see that information. On the left-hand side, I have the reports I've created in the last month. Reports are housed there for 30 days. After 30 days, they will be erased. So, of course, you can always save a copy to your device, download it, but RPR will no longer save it for you after 30 days. Your second step after you've given it the address or the zip code or the school is to select the report. So if you notice, these reports are available either for a specific address, which is the first column, or they're available for a neighborhood, which is the second column. So only a handful of them are available per neighborhood. There's a property report. There's a seller's report, which is the CMA, a property flyer, a mini property report, which is a shorter version of the property report. There's a valuation workbook, which is like the seller's report, but it's usually used by appraisers. There is the market activity report, the neighborhood report, and the school report. You can personalize the report, include the recipient's name, type in a message, and then you can either have it saved here so that you can open it and view it, or you can email it directly on the spot. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to run a few of these so that you can see an example of each. On the right hand side, you have some customization options. So on your cover page, what would you like to include? Do you want all of the elements? Your name, your title, your office address, etc.? Or do you want to reduce this a little bit? You can go ahead and remove some check marks. You can show your page numbers. So your report pages would be numbered. And you can manage your custom pages. Custom pages allows you to upload your own PDFs. And it does tell you that the PDF files can be no larger than 10 megabytes. But let's say you have marketing materials from the office or what have you, and you want to go ahead and add that in, you absolutely can. And then you have your profile information at the bottom so that you're aware of what you added, and you would be aware of what would be on the cover photo or cover sheet, not cover photo. So I'm going to go ahead and run a few of these. For each of these, you have more details and show a sample. If I click on more details, it is going to show me all of the pages that are included in the reports. And I can go ahead and if there are certain pages I'm not interested in including, I can just take that check mark off and not include it. If I click on show sample, I'm going to see a generic sample of the report. And at the bottom, they'll give me an estimate of how long the report would be. So this is roughly 30 pages, and it's everything that we saw in summary, history, charts, all the information we just reviewed, but in a report format. So I'm going to go ahead and create the property report. Scroll down. I want it to be a PDF. I'm going to run the report. Because I opted to save it as a PDF in the system, it's going to show up on the left-hand side. It hasn't been emailed. Nobody has seen it. The seller's report will cover in CMA workshop. The property flyer allows me to create a flyer. So if I click on more details, because it's in the MLS, it's offering me those pictures, but I can also upload pictures. Remember? So now I can use those pictures on the flyer. in a listing presentation, it might be nice to include this and say, hey, this is an example of a flyer I might be able to create for your property, just to give them a sample. I would enter a headline. So I'm just going to go ahead and type in a quick headline, type in some information. If it's in the MLS, it'll pull the remarks. And then you can suppress the year built, the tax amount, the subdivision, the school district, or the MLS number. Suppress means to remove. So if you'd like to remove any of that, you definitely can. And I'm going to go ahead and run that report. Now, if the property report that I showed you is too long, you have the mini property report. This one is about half the length of the property report. So whereas the property report was about 29 pages, this mini property report is about 11. So I'm going to go ahead and run that report as well. There's always a notification to let you know it'll take a few minutes. The valuation workbook, again, it has to do with the CMA. The market activity report. So the market activity is basically the market conditions. It is going to include whatever you have checked off here, and you can be very specific about what kind of information you would like to see. So you have your report elements, your change types, your time period, your property types. You can specify a value range, bed, bath, square footage, year built. How many properties do you want to see per status, and how would you like them sorted? So this is great for you to analyze your market and then maybe figure out what your action plan is going to be, what your business plan is going to be, your plan of attack. And then we have the neighborhood report, which is based on the zip code. So it's everything that we discussed about the demographics and the information for the people who live there. I'm going to go ahead and run that report. And I'm going to leave the school report for last because I'd like to show you how to search for listings based on schools. So if I go ahead and I click on the property report, this is an example based on the listing that I chose. It is 29 pages, and so it might be a little excessive, but it has every single detail that we just reviewed when we searched for this property, including all of the pictures. So it has all of the demographics, all of the data, all of the statistics, everything. Okay, it also has information on the map, so it'll color code things like flood zones. So if that's too long, your other option was the mini property report that I mentioned. The mini property report is about half as long, and it just has information that's focused a little more on the property and not as much on the surrounding areas. It's got a little bit of that information, but not as much as the full property report. Let me close that notification. Now, the flyer is a nice option, and it's just one page. It's got one picture and the map, listing details, the description, and your information. So it's just a one-page flyer. The market activity report can be really lengthy depending on how many statuses you choose and how many property types you choose. I focused on residential. Okay, so I'm going to see what's going on with the estimated home values, changes in the last 12 months, concentration of distressed properties, sale prices, list prices, and then I'm going to see column by column how many new listings, how many pending, how many price changes, distressed and recently sold. And then I'm going to see the low, median, high, average, market activity, expired, new for lease, recently leased. And then it's going to break down status by status. So I asked for a maximum of 10, so here are the 10 new listings. Here are the 10 pending, 10 price changes, the distressed, and the sold. So this report and the length of this report will fluctuate based on what's going on and how much information you choose to see. I've got my expired listings at the bottom. new for lease. So I've got my breakdown status by status, and then at the end, an explanation of what RPR is and where they get their information. And then lastly, we have the neighborhood report, which has the data and demographics. This one's usually between 10 and 15 pages long. It has all those statistics we had seen previously, but it also has that additional information that we had discussed. The age range of adults by group, the age range of kids, income brackets, levels of education, occupations, quality of life, and the walkability score. So this is a nice report for where maybe someone who's relocating and they don't really know too much about the area. So those were all of the reports except the school report. I'm actually going to show you how to search for listings based on schools. So when someone comes and tells you, I really want my child to attend this school, you can actually ask RPR to give you listings that are nearby. So I'm going to go home. And what I'm going to do is I can go ahead and click on schools. And if they tell me they really want their kid to go to Coral Gables Prep, I'm going to go ahead and search for the schools in Coral Gables. You can select school type. You can click on advanced and enter a school name. So if they're really interested in Coral Gables Prep, I'm going to go ahead and type it in here. Click on search and see if I can get it to come up. There it is. I can create a report, or I can go ahead and get nearby properties for sale. The report actually also includes those properties. If you're not interested in the report and you're interested in just searching, you can go ahead and click on nearby properties for sale. And I've got 301 properties that came up. But on the left-hand side, I've got my criteria. So I can go ahead and say, don't show me pending. I only want to see active. Do you want to see distressed, short sales, etc.? The price range. So let's say that they are looking at between $450 and $550. And they want it to have 2 or more bedrooms and 2 or more bathrooms. You even have lot size, property types that needs to be single family. Anything that you change on the left hand side, which is where all the criteria is listed, you're going to go ahead and click on apply. And now from those 300 properties, I have 11 that fall within the parameters that we were looking for. I'm just going to go back home and I'm going to click on that recent search, that last one. And instead of clicking on get results, I'm going to go ahead and look for Coral Gables Prep, and I'm going to go ahead and just say get report. Okay, so there it is, get report. Now for the school, if I click on more details, it has school information, but I can also ask for nearby schools that are public, private, and or charter. I can ask for schools that are elementary, middle, or high school. I can search for nearby schools within anywhere from the entire district to 20 miles. And I can search for nearby properties anywhere within the district, a mile, 20 miles. Personalize it. I'm going to go ahead and run it. So this report will tell them more about the school. It will give them information on nearby schools, and it will give them information on nearby listings. However, you cannot apply the search criteria to those listings. So it would be anything and everything that's nearby. So you might want to do a combination of what we did originally, which was kind of whittle it down using criteria, and also take that, print it, or save it as a PDF, and then also create this report. Okay, so it's finalizing that school report. When we're done with this, I'd like to show you how you could potentially use RPR to do a little bit of farming and prospecting, because you can actually print mailing labels from RPR. Okay, so here's the school report. Here's the school information in comparison with the county. It's going to give you everything from ratio of students to teachers to how many students are on the free and reduced lunch program, what have you, community reviews, the nearby schools, and then lastly, the nearby properties that are for sale. So you can go ahead and give this report to the customer, and they would not only have more school information, but they would have school options, because we never want to encourage them or discourage them from, a specific school or area, but they need to make that choice. So this gives them almost anything they could need in terms of what would they need to choose, what school they would need to choose. And it also gives them those nearby properties. Okay, so those are all of the reports, pretty much except the seller's report and the valuation workbook. We're going to go ahead back home and I'm going to show you how you can use RPR to search for potential new listings so that you can send them mailers. So I always start with all properties because I'm interested in targeting properties that aren't listed that could potentially be a new listing. I need to start with all properties. And then I need to enter a city, a zip code, a specific area. I can even draw on the map. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to specify 33132. Okay, I click. And if I click on advanced, I can specify a value range. I can search using specific parameters. But maybe I want to target properties that sold 10 years ago, because we know that statistically people are moving every 7 to 10 years. So maybe I want to look at properties in this area that sold 10 years ago, and I want to go ahead and target those properties with mailers and promotional materials to say, hey, are you interested in selling? 10 years ago, properties were selling at X amount. Now they're selling at X amount. Contact me if you're interested. So where it says sold date, I'm actually going to give it a date range, and I'm going to say January 1st of 2010 to December 31st of 2010. And this could be hit or miss. This is like going fishing. You got to put out the information, see what you get. If you get nothing, you got to go back and recast that line. I'm going to go ahead and specify single family, but you can combine if you'd like. And I'm going to just go ahead and run that search. So it's loading my results. And there's one property that came up. One. So if I want, I can kind of expand this a little bit more. It's sold for $85,000, which is interesting. So if I wanted to kind of refine this a little bit more, I could just go ahead and say, let me go back. Not refine, but expand it, I should say. And I'm going to say 33132. Click on advanced. And this time, let's go back 7 to 10 years. So 7 years ago would have been 2013. So I'm going to see what happened in a 3-year span. And that should give me more. Watch it give me 2 now. Yep, that's exactly what happened. So I have 2. If at any point in time I wanted to kind of change this, you can actually go to the map and click on bigger map, and there are different tools built into the map. So one of them being draw shape. So maybe I want to kind of move this over and I want to say, all right, let me move over to West Flagler and East Little Havana. I can go ahead and say draw shape, draw a box, click and drag, and I can say search in this area. I can create a report, I can edit. So I can go ahead and just say search in this area. And now I see that there are 977 properties. If I want to go ahead and send out a mailer, at the top it says print mailing labels. I can go ahead and click on mailing labels. And you are allowed to print 2,000 labels a month. Every month at the start of the month, it'll reset to 2,000. You can choose to have it be a PDF. You can choose your Avery label size. Do you want it to go to the property address or the tax billing address? If I am going to communicate with the seller, I would say the tax billing address, and I can eliminate duplicates. So if the same person owns various properties, I'm not sending them 5 of the same thing. I can have it say owner name and or current resident, or I can customize it and type whatever I'd like. Occupancy type. Do I only want to target owner occupied absentee owners or all of them? I can exclude properties that are listed. So I'm in compliance. I'm not doing anything I'm not supposed to do. I can exclude properties that are on the do not mail list, and I can exclude properties that have an incomplete address. I can export all of my records, or maybe that month I've created quite a few and I only have 100 left, and I could say, okay, give me the first 100 at least. So I'm just going to go ahead and show you the first few. And then I would click on print. The minute you click on print, it will deduct whatever you are exporting from the total amount you have for the month. So I'm going to go ahead and click on print. You don't have to. And here are my labels. And now I can print these out, put these on my mailers, and send them off. So again, you have $2,000 a month to use however you'd like. What I like is that you do have this option that automatically excludes listed properties. So you're not worried about accidentally marketing to someone who already has an agent. You are safe. You don't have to worry about violating anything from Code of Ethics. Now the map, aside from drawing, you also see on the right hand side, gray road area overhead. You have points of interest, POIs, which will go ahead and based on whatever you select, it'll put it on the map for you. Under show geographies, for those of you that are interested, they added in opportunity zones. So anything that is highlighted in orange is an opportunity zone. So if you wanted to create mailers and target properties in opportunity zones, you could do that as well. And that is it for RPR. There is a mobile application, and we do cover that in a class called Mobile Marketing. If you have any questions, please feel free to let us know. And as always, thank you for being a Miami member.